Hello and welcome. My name is Evgeny Rusakov and you're watching TVP World, interview from Vilnius. War in Ukraine lasts for more than 950 days now. At this moment, it looks like none of the sides, neither Ukrainians nor Russians, can somehow tip the scales in their favor. To discuss war in Ukraine, Vladimir Putin's recent announcement about changes in the nuclear doctrine, and many more, we are joined today by the military expert at Locked and Loaded Civic Center for Security and Defense Analysis, Mantas Vilimas. Hello, Mantas, and thank you for joining us today.
Hello, it's my pleasure.
Mantas, first question. What's the situation on the battlefield at this specific moment? How are both Russians and Ukrainians doing?
The situation on the battlefield is reminiscent of First World War. It's grinding steadily and at slow pace. However, we see that Russians are still advancing. And although the situation is not critical yet, Ukrainians managed to somewhat level the pressure at the Kharkiv area, and they started their Kursk offensive, as we know. Their aim is more to stabilize the situation that is currently happening on the front line. That they manage more or less to do for the current time being. Yet there's not really too many good news from the front line, and we still see that the battles are ongoing and Russians are pressing forward.
So you said that word critical. What do you mean by saying critical?
It can become critical when we see collapse of front lines, when either side will start advancing at fast pace, or we see a huge increase in numbers of deaths of one side. But luckily, we're still not there yet, and the situation for now is, well, it could be called stable, relatively speaking.
So, according to Ukrainian intelligence chief Kirill Budanov, North Korea's military aid to Russia, including large amounts of ammunition, is causing the most damage to Ukraine. So, why is that? How come North Korean military equipment causes the biggest damage?
Well, it's actually very simple. Russians are depleting their stocks of ammunition. That's the only reason why they are looking for additional support from North Korea, from Iran. And we know that they are using their ammunition for quite a long time already. It's situation the way it is good for Ukrainians. Not to say that Russians are depleted. Of course, they have their ammunition capacities met. The only problem they face is to keep their fire superiority, which they are trying to do.
Okay, there's another interesting news about Kirill Budanov, which I've seen on the internet. I don't know, how should I, just take this news? So I've I've seen some information that Kirill Budanov is going to be replaced by someone else, and that it's going to happen very soon. So have you heard anything like this? And if this is a propaganda or disinformation, why is that being spread?
This is not the first time that we're hearing about Mr. Budanov in the sense that he might be replaced. It's very hard to say anything concrete about such statements. They are not really concrete themselves, and we don't know any timetables, we don't know any dates or whether it's really going to take place. But changes in military positions are understandable, even
during the war.
Well, of course, we can see how many heads of military positions are already changed. Sometimes it's useful to have a different perspective at different time, but I would not look at this as this news. It's not even news yet.
I'd say this were more of a rumors, but I still.
This is more or less a rumor, but I would not look at it with any serious intent for current time being.
By the way, it's not the first time I meet Kirill Budanov's name in the news. So why Why is he so special? Is he like one of the main Russian army's enemies, or what about him? Is he like the most wanted?
Very hard to give an opinion on that, but just to speculate, I would say that it's easier to have a face of an enemy, you know?
Okay.
And
Makes
if you
sense.
want to have a villain, you put some face on it, and then you have a target. Maybe that would be the reason. Ukrainians are working with their public relations and their, so to say, marketing of this war very well. They learned the lessons after 2014 very good, and now what they're doing an excellent job of, you know, providing information where it is needed to provide, so to say, propaganda where it is needed to be provided, and so on and so forth. So, you know, on one hand, it's good to have heroes for Ukrainians. On the other hand, it's very comfortable and very easy for Russians to have their targets.
Okay. Well, makes sense. Okay, let's come back to this nuclear doctrine that I mentioned in the very beginning. So Vladimir Putin has recently announced a change in that nuclear doctrine. And what's your take on this? Is this really a threatening signal? And does this mean that Russia is preparing a nuclear response to strike on its territory?
This is not the first time we're hearing about this particular
Nuclear
aggression.
threat, exactly, yes.
But it's nothing new. Kremlin understands that it has no countermeasures against Western weaponry. We see that they already cannot stop Ukrainian homemade drones. And those drones are targeting targets thousands of kilometers inside Russia. So basically this bluff is actually the only tool that Kremlin still has against the West, and they're doing it with some sort of success, we could say, because we see that there are more and more, well, not more, there are still a lot of panicked people and voices in the West who are still afraid of this rhetoric, but that's nothing more of a simple bullying.
So how should the West in general, let's say, react to that kind of Putin talks again, this time?
I believe that eastern part of let's say, NATO, of European Union, I mean, Baltics, Poland,
exactly, yes.
Finland,
Let's put it there.
we already know how to deal with such rhetoric. It's the same way how you deal with every bully. You stand against him. You do not give up, do not falter under his terms, under his pressure. NATO's position is to be very gentlemanlike and not to stir any militaristic opinions, generally speaking. Every public image that NATO provides is very calm and very sophisticated, so to say. But nothing too extravaganza. Unlike the Russians, who do everything too loud and too powerful, and they try to intimidate everybody.
As you already said, bullies understand just the rhetorics of other bullies. Simple as that. Not so long ago, Donald Trump said that USA should leave Ukraine because Russia won all its wars, and he cited the Napoleonic and Hitler wars as examples. So let's say Donald Trump wins the elections and USA stops its military aid to Ukraine or reduces it significantly. So could Ukraine continue battling with only help from Europe? And how significant is the United States help?
The help of the United States is very significant and very important. Currently it provides a little more than half of all support that Ukraine gets. It would be very difficult to continue this war on current terms without that support. We know that Europe is building back its military capabilities. There are plans to build new factories. There are plans to bring back the modern...
I've heard those talks since 2022.
Yeah, of course, and most of those are talks, but there are still some steps taken already, and we're trying to do something, and that's great. but it will take time. It will take at least a couple of years.
And
It
then
will not
there's
happen
another question.
overnight.
When the time comes, shall we see Ukraine as a state in a couple of years then?
The one thing is for sure, Ukrainians are not going to give up if they lose the support. The war is going to continue. It's going to be harder on Ukrainians, but it's not going to be overnight. United States military assistance is very important, but it's not everything that Ukraine has. As we already see, Ukrainians are innovating on the military area themselves. They're looking for solutions. They're creating those solutions themselves. And we still have Europe that stands strongly behind Ukraine for the most part.
Okay. What if then Kamala Harris wins the presidential elections? I mean, again, regarding military aid to Ukraine.
As it is currently known, Kamala Harris was one of first politicians that supported Ukraine in the very beginning of this second part of this war. So I'm not sure that we would see anything radically different than what is happening right now in terms of U.S. politics and U.S. position on Ukraine. We know that overwhelming majority of Americans, over 70%, I believe, support Ukraine. So the public is supporting Ukraine. Most of politicians are supporting Ukraine. Kamala Harris would most probably continue the current politics of Joe Biden, and we will see. It's hard to predict anything, but that's most definitely for Ukraine. That would be a more preferable option.
Okay, and I would like to to end this interview with Vladimir Zelensky's recent visit to the United States. So, what's your take on this visit in general, and what's your take on Vladimir Zelensky's peace plan that he showed to Joe Biden's administration and to Kamala Harris and to Donald Trump?
This visit, as any other visit, is very important, and that's the basics of international relationships and international politics. Zelensky does his job very well, but to say that this visit was something groundbreaking would not be correct. We heard that there are nothing revolutionary about the proposed peace plan, but it's very easy to understand that. I mean, what idea could you give at the current situation? Ukrainians are not willing to lose any of their territories. They are not willing to lose people that Ukraine has stolen from them, and they're not going to go on living peacefully with its neighbor the way it is right now. And Russia is apparently not willing to make any concessions also. So I'm afraid that peace is pretty distant for now.
What's your predictions for this winter?
It's going to be harsh, that's for sure. It's really going to be harsh. We already know that Russians destroyed most of infrastructure that's required for
energy infrastructure. That's
precisely
right.
for Ukrainians, called the Ukrainian winters, and I'm really not sure how's that going to look. The civilian population is going to suffer. They're going to feel the pressure the most, but still, that is not something that will make Ukraine surrender or crumble.
Well, hopefully not. Hopefully not. Mantas, thank you so much for joining us today, and hope to see you once again.
Thank you.
And I would like to remind our viewers that our guest for today was a military expert at Locked and Loaded Civic Center for Security and Defense Analysis, Mantas Vilimas. You're watching TVP World. Stay with us.